Welcome to Season 2 of Keeping It 100 Real Conversations with Jacqui, where each week we will discuss life experiences with subject matter experts. Stay tuned for this next episode. Hello and welcome to Keeping It 100 Real Conversations with Jacqui, where we discuss real life experiences. And today we're going to be discussing the power of information with Latisia. And I'm your host, Jacqui Mono. And I'm going to give Latisia a chance to introduce herself. She's a founder of UrbanT, and she hosts a show called Woke Wednesday, which the season 2 is going to be actually airing in January of 2022. So I'm going to give Latisia a chance to introduce herself here. Hi, Latisia.
Hi, how are you, Jacqui?
Good, thank you.
So my name is Latisia. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And like Jacqui mentioned, I am the CEO of a business called UrbanT, where I promote social, cultural, informational events around the city of Syracuse, New York, as well as host a show which is called, as Jacqui mentioned, Woke Wednesday, where we discuss topics that impact the urban community. The platform, the media outlet, is centered around the urban community and the topics, the conversations that are being had within the urban community to share information, so that we can elevate, really contribute personally as well as to our communities and our surroundings. So that is UrbanT in a nutshell. So thanks again for having me.
I love it. You're very, very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And obviously we're in Canada, so it's so nice for the Canadian communities and the audience to actually be able to listen to what you do, so that you can spread the word a little bit more. And I appreciate you taking the time, even with the time difference, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Glad to.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So we're going to be talking about the power of information, and this is going to be such a broad topic in terms of the power of the internet, the power of the resources that we have out there, where it could be an advantage, it could be somewhat of a disadvantage as well, right? And you're very big at interviewing people that are either technology advanced as well, people from different backgrounds, right? So let's just talk let's dive into that information, what we can do with the information that we have out there, the resources that we have out there. As we know, especially in this day and age, there's a lot of information out there that isn't necessarily the best, but there's also amazing information, and it's how we use that information. So what would be your opinion in terms of, like, based on this topic? Let's just dive into it. You want to kind of chime in and just kind of let us know what your thoughts are and what we could do. Let's have a conversation.
Sure, sure. So you're right. Information is prevalent and it's at the fingertips and it's constant. It's our day to day. I mean, anytime you want information, you have access to it. And as you mentioned, not all information is quality information. It's funny, I did a Woke Wednesday show
Yeah.
called Media Integrity, Influence, and Impact. And I
Right.
looked at those three things with media professionals. I said, can we trust media? How do we use it? What sources do we pay attention to? How is this impacting our culture? How we feel about the world? How we feel even about ourselves? We really delve into this very topic. And what I find is that, while information is prevalent, we really do have to be careful about the information that we take in and the things that we allow into our psyche. So, say for example, you're scrolling through social media
Mm-hmm.
and you're finding things or seeing things that are negative. You're seeing things even about your own people,
Mm-hmm.
or that are coming through that may not be positive images. Body images may not be positive images, and sometimes it doesn't come across as being negative at first glance, but a
Mm-hmm.
reiteration of seeing those types of things can really frame the way you feel about yourself and about your community and about your people. And so you really have to be careful about the types of things that you see and the things that you listen to, because it can become your reality. And that's where the
Yeah.
impact of media comes in, and the prevalence of media. It's everywhere. It's TV, it's radio, it's billboards. I mean, any sort of form of communication is essentially media. It's
Mm-hmm.
communicating a message to you. So, what are those messages? How are we taking them in? And what do we do with those messages once we do internalize them? And so that's why it's very important to be, cautious about the things that you take in as far as media is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of people. I mean, there's two spectrums to media too, or how we receive it. Um, you know, you could choose not to follow what anybody is saying out there, or what you're seeing online, or even on TV, or even on the news. And on the other hand, you could be that person that absorbs all the information, and you just take it everything as at face value.
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, the person that doesn't necessarily take all the information, a lot of people would tend to, refer to them as skeptics, or like just being skeptical all the time. Um,
Mm.
I
But they
honestly feel, what's that?
I
Sorry,
was
what was
going to
that?
say, but they're also taking in some sort of information that is telling them to be skeptic, right? So
Right?
those people that are not, they're still making a choice and a
Mhm,
decision
mhm.
about the media that they intake. They're still absorbing it, and it's interesting because even though we consciously are saying that we are not going to take on certain beliefs or thoughts or feelings about things, the more and more we allow them to be prevalent in our lives, the more and more they can kind of shape the way that
Right.
we think, whether we like it or not.
It's true. I mean, yeah, it's very true. Especially with the world of social media these days, you can get the fake news, you can get the real news, but you just don't know how do you cipher through something like that, right? Because there's just so much
Mhm.
information out there that, and some of it literally, it should not even be watched, but you can't help but watch it, right? You can't help but listen and say, "Oh my God, could this be true?" And what are some of the ways that somebody can actually cipher through that? What would be your advice in that situation where, you get all there's so much noise out there? How do you cipher through that?
Yeah.
Yeah, what would
Yeah,
be your
yeah,
opinion
you're
on that?
right. You're right. There's a
Mhm,
ton of noise, and it's very difficult to know truth from fiction.
mhm,
You know,
mhm,
uh, so what I asked this very question of the media professionals that sat on the panel with me, and they said, you have to rely on reputable sources. So, if sources that have been in the game for a long time, sources that are in some ways held accountable for holding up
mhm,
the truth. So, say
mhm.
for example, CNN or Fox. Let's just two ends of the spectrum.
Right.
Let's just say those two, for example.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
those at least are accountable to the larger mainstream media community for producing information that is accurate. Now,
right.
even with that, we have two sides of the spectrum that are saying different things.
Mhm,
These other things that may be happening as well. But you
mhm,
look at that, and then you look at on the other side of the coin, social media. Whereas, even my show, our show, you have to take things with a grain of salt, right? And really use your intellect to say, is that really the truth, or is that subjective? Is that, someone's opinion? Is that, you know, someone asserting something that may not be actually based in actual fact, but it's more around their experience and how they experience the world. And you really have to decipher the difference between the two. That's the
mhm.
really important thing, is that being conscious about deciphering the difference between the two sets of media, where, you have one that is sort of an authority in media, and then on social media, you have people that, really what they're saying is a lot of opinion. You may
Yep.
agree with it, but it may not be necessarily fact.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So speaking of that, the factful stuff, do you find that sometimes, especially when news are concerned, there's a lot of topics at hand that the media tends to focus on that fearful tactic where it just, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of people, we listen to the news, and that's the only way most of the time where you can get most of the information. I mean, thank goodness for the internet and social media, where we can probably cipher through some of this stuff and say, is it really true? Or connect with people who are actually in that location. But there's a lot of fear that comes behind a lot of news these days, where they there's a certain way of like portraying something and exaggerating it, if I may say so if I could say that. Whether or not it's exaggeration, again, that's my opinion, but a lot of the times it almost feels like it's a sense of exaggeration, a sense of like fear mongering. What would be your opinion on that aspect?
Mhm.
If you have an opinion on
Yeah.
it, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I would say is that media is sensational. And
Mm,
it's intended to be sensational. It's intended to grab your attention. It's intended to keep you there. And so there are tactics. Now, I did not go to media school or anything like that, but there are
mhm,
tactics that are used in order to draw you in and engage you so that you can, really absorb and take in the information that is wanted to be shared. I mean, you think about even titles of shows, right? We try to
mhm.
what's catchy, what's trendy, what's popping, what's in the news, what's the new thing. Like we're
Yeah.
media professionals, we're always looking for ways to kind of bring you in and get you to be engaged. And so fear is another tactic I think that is
Mhm,
used in some cases in order to bring you in and to engage you. Again, sex sells, so maybe there's a little bit of sensationalization,
mhm.
sensationalized
Yeah.
that way as well. But there's also, there's all kinds of ways that, media is used to do that, where it's trying to engage you, trying to bring you in
Mhm.
and keep you there, to be honest. And some of that, you have to be cautious of too. Is this really an issue? What does the data say?
Yeah.
Do we have enough data at this point to even be making these kinds of assertions? So listening with a critical ear.
Mm.
We all have minds and we don't have to take everything
That we
that
hear.
someone is saying, even if we feel like it is even if we feel that
Mhm.
it is a reputable source, we can use our own intellect and our own experience to say that that might not be quite what it is.
Yeah.
That's not what I've experienced or what I know to be true.
Mm.
And it's okay.
Yep.
And it's okay for us to do. And in fact, we should.
Yeah, and I also find that I mean, the media, unless you listen to CNN, which is a little bit more global, a lot of local broadcasting media tends to focus on things that are just within our bubble, which is fine. But I think it's so important for for us to also kind of research things that are happening internationally as well. Bring all that resource in and make that decision based on that if it's a global problem, right? And that's another thing too, where we almost need to, as individuals, almost need to do external research in order for us to, and not just use one source as a source of, oh, I'm going to just take whatever they say at face value. I'm going to just take it and just believe whatever it is, right? I think it's also our
Yeah.
responsibility to do the research, the necessary research. Papers, internet. The internet is so broad that you can research anything that you want, any way you want to. But yeah, that's a very, very good point. I like that. I like that. So you being in New York or in the US, where media is concerned, do you find that a lot of people tend to believe what they hear all the time? The US is so big, and again, the
Yeah.
news tends to pretty much just center around New
Mhm.
Year's US. Very, very often there will be international news as well. So, what would be your opinion in terms of people's knowledge, in terms of what's happening outside the country itself?
Yeah, what I do, I'm glad you brought that back up because I did want to just make a point on the whole.
Hmm.
Well, first international news, but then also just national news, because
Yeah,
there are some people that really just stay really in their community and just know what's happening in front of them. And that's so limiting.
it's
It's
so
so limiting.
limiting. Oh,
It really
absolutely.
is. And there's so many
Hmm.
connections that can be made when you look just a little bit broader. So you look from, your city to your state news, to
Hmm.
national news, and then international news. And then it opens up a whole new world for us. And I,
Hmm.
I I think it's so important too, because again, we frame our beliefs around our experiences. So if we have a very narrow um, information base of where we're taking information in from, then we have a very narrow
Yeah,
mindset.
yeah.
But yeah, so Jackie, like I was saying, I
Mhm.
really just feel that it's very limited and a very narrow mindset when you don't expand your information intake to other areas outside of just your community. Now, I'd
Absolutely.
also say that it is also narrow minded to also just take in the things that you believe. And this is a challenging one for people,
Mm-hmm.
because people get really hot and heavy about what they believe. But,
Mm-hmm.
in order for us to learn and grow and really truly appreciate differences, it'd be best if we not only listen to the things that reinforce our beliefs and the things that we value, right? But also some of the things that are a little bit contrary to that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really for understanding, like, why, what is this mindset, or what brings you to this perspective, this opinion? Because I find that a lot of times there is some commonality or something that we can link and connect to say, okay, I see that, or I
Right.
can feel that, or I can see where that may come from. But when we don't allow ourselves to even consider someone else's perspective, I think we're really shrinking, just experience in this world, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
and our ability to understand and appreciate others. And we all, we all got to get along. So,
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
yes. So it's really best for us, like I said, to expand geographically the intake,
Mm-hmm.
but also just in opinion base. Let's
Mm.
listen. Let's listen a little bit
Mm-hmm.
to others' opinion, and try to figure out how they may have gotten there, and if there's any sort of similarities or commonalities that we can link to for a better appreciation and understanding of each other.
I absolutely agree on that. There's a lot of people that feel like they're always right. And being open-minded is so important. It's also important just in terms of just, interacting with another human being, because your my experience and your experience are always going to be somewhat different, maybe similar, but somewhat different, right? And there's a lot of people that literally don't want to hear any other person's opinion, and that right, and it doesn't matter who you are, that right. So
Yeah.
that's a very, very important piece. And just also, I mean, not to this conversation isn't necessarily about pinpointing who's right and who's wrong, but I mean,
Yeah.
even just in the recent news that we have going on with the pandemic or whatever, there's so many opinions about everything. And it's
Mm-hmm.
so important for us to remind ourselves to be extremely compassionate and kind, and to listen to another person's point of view without trashing the other person's point of view, right?
Right.
And just
Right. To
being
be
just the level
open.
of understanding, exactly, being open, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
families are being torn apart because of different views. Friendships are being torn apart because of point of views. And I think at this point in time, people just kind of need to learn how to listen, take it in, and say
Mm-hmm.
thank you for your advice, or I hear you, and this is my opinion as
Mm-hmm.
well, I hear you, you hear me too, kind
Yeah.
of thing. And if we
Mm-hmm.
can just kind of live our lives in that sense, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's really, really, really important.
Yeah, I
Sense
do
of
too.
judgment, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I do too. And we got to get away from being so divisive. And so I
Hmm.
think, part of that is just understanding some of those alternate perspectives. And again, we
Hmm.
may not, I mean, we're not listening to fully understand in the sense of, now I'm going to change my mind. We're listening because we want to understand you and have compassion around what you're saying as well.
Right.
And like I often find that there's some sort of link. Oh, I didn't know that. And that's how we really grow and develop. I mean, if we
Hmm.
we only hear the same things all the time, that's not moving forward. That's not, anything that's going to help propel us in a direction of unity, to be honest, in some sort of way. So I really feel that it's critically important for us to
Hmm.
to broaden our perspectives by listening in on those other alternate perspectives that may not necessarily jive exactly with what we are thinking and feeling.
I love that. I love that. Okay, well, I
Yeah.
mean, basically talking about kindness, I love the
Mhm.
sense of kindness and compassion behind this conversation as well. So in hindsight now, when we're when you want to, if somebody's like, okay, Leticia, I I'm that person that has been listening to everything, what would be your advice in this case, for that person? And then we're gonna flip it over to the person that says, I don't listen to everything that I hear, you know what I mean? So what would be your advice in terms of that person that's like, you know what, Leticia, thank you so much for this information, I appreciate it, I'm receiving it. um However, I can't help but listen to what I hear from any spectrum of the media.
Mhm. Yeah, so
Right?
so that person has to learn to turn it off.
Yeah.
They've got to learn to shut down and turn it off,
Yeah.
because some of the things that are coming through will literally drive you crazy. Like, it's just too much. Some people are nonstop listening and taking in media, and
Hmm.
it can be overwhelming. It can be stressful, and it can really just put a lot on your brain that you don't necessarily need. And so, I would say to that person that is just taking in all sorts of media, listening to everything, is sort of here and there, and just has all these softened feelings because of what they're hearing, is to take some of that down and turn some of it off. There
Hmm.
was a time when there was only certain times of the day that when we could take in news, for example, because again, media is pervasive; it's all around
Right.
us.
Yeah.
But news, we could only take in certain times of the day. Now you can get it at any time of the day.
Hmm.
And I think that, people take advantage of that, right? They're like, yeah, I can, listen in and be informed. And I think that's good to be informed. But I also think that there's a limit to that. And I think that, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like there's just too much going on, it is okay to shut off and to
To
turn
shut
off.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And for our mental health, we really need to. I know, during the George Floyd murder trial, it
Hmm.
was very overwhelming for me. Some of the
Yeah.
things
That
that
was
I
a
was
very heavy
hearing,
time.
it
Yeah.
was a very, very heavy time. And for my
Hmm.
mental health, even though I wanted to know, for my mental health, I needed to shut off. I needed to turn off. I needed to focus on something different,
Hmm.
view another topic. I needed to move away from that and
Yeah.
come back to it later. And so for that person, they really just have to find ways that they can maybe divert their attention into other areas, or maybe just shut off completely from some of the news that's coming in. And you
Yeah.
can have certain times of the day where you're taking in information, and other times you're just not, and just sort of
Hmm.
just relaxing off of that for a little
Oh, absolutely. And I mean,
bit.
as we are both entrepreneurs, and we have our different platforms where we share a lot of information through social media. That's how we build our businesses. But sometimes I find that I need to take a step back, and I'm not always on Instagram or Facebook.
Right.
And I know a lot of people are like, but how are you going to grow your business if you're not posting every day or every 2 days? It's like sometimes I literally need to take a step back. Because
Hmm.
even when I'm posting, I can't help but scroll through the
Absorb.
timelines and
Hmm.
absorb all that. and
Hmm.
and uh, and being a person that absorbs energies from every single part of God knows where, I've kind of learned to kind of shut off. I mean, I'm not deactivating my account, I just choose not to go on there that day or
Yeah.
2 days. Sometimes I need a week, and I
Hmm.
think that's
Hmm.
okay too, right?
Yeah,
um
and I'm glad you mentioned energy, because
mhm,
that's exactly what it is.
mhm,
It takes up space in your head. It can reshape how you feel, what you're
mhm,
thinking,
mhm.
all of those things. And so that's why we really have to be careful. Like, we have our own minds. Like, let's not become robots, and just get into a mode of
That's
just
right.
doing,
I love that robot
right?
thing. Yeah,
Let's not become robots and just get
yeah,
into a mode of doing the same thing over and over and over again. You can
yeah.
make a choice to do something different. And if you need to, for your mental health, if you need to, for
Mhm,
whatever reason, things are just becoming overwhelming, take the
mhm.
time, take the break. And honestly, feel free to block accounts, feel free to unfollow. Like, if
Yep.
you're following someone and every time they come up and it's negative, or it's something that you just don't want to take in, get rid of it. Get
Yeah.
rid you're not obligated to keep anybody and
Oh yeah.
follow their information that they're sharing.
Exactly. And I mean, also, like, sometimes, I mean, you find, I don't know if you've had this happen to you at times, but like where somebody slips into your DMs and just to kind of talk smack about whatever it is that you posted. Um, and I try not. I mean, sometimes it does hit me hard. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, sometimes it does get to me, and then I shut down. But now I'm at that mental state where I'm just like, you know what? When somebody does that, block. You don't have to see my stuff, so you just block them. End of story. Move on. Because
It's
that for
so
you,
easy. It's so
right?
easy to do.
Oh,
It's so, so, so easy to do.
yeah.
And it's funny because some people will be like, well, I don't like Instagram, or I don't like Facebook because of the things I'm seeing. I'm like, well, you're
Hmm.
not following the right people. Like, get rid of them.
Get rid of
You
them.
have a choice. You have a
Yeah.
choice. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people go on there, well, every time I go on, I see this. And I'm like, well, you're following the wrong people. Like, I know for myself, I follow people that are inspirational,
Mm-hmm.
motivational. They're talking about positive things, they're
Mm-hmm.
uplifting. And I know things happen. That's not what I'm saying. We're not trying to like not feel like we can't feel any pain, or we can't, see anything that will be, disruptive or anything like that. That's not saying that, but there are some
Mm-hmm.
people that have a consistent message of negativity, and we just can't afford that
Yep.
to be in our space. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
definitely, I would encourage anybody to do that for
No,
sure.
absolutely. I mean, I think
Hmm.
Facebook is probably more filled with more people that usually tend to be a little bit more negative. Instagram, maybe it's because I do choose to follow people that
I think so.
uplift me, that I don't see it as much on Instagram than I do on Facebook. And even on Facebook, if I see that, I just unfollow them, and then they just
Exactly.
don't pop up on my timeline. Maybe, I mean, sometimes that's, close people or people I've known for years, but I mean, if that happens, you just unfollow them and they never pop up on your timeline. Right. So anyway, this is great. All right, Latisia, I think it's time for us um finish off and close off the show. But thank you so much for joining me here today. I think you're muted right now, but I'm not sure what's happening, but you'll let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a great time. I'm
Yeah.
glad that we're talking about this topic because it's such an important one.
Yes.
Maybe as a part two or a round two,
Yeah.
we could talk about how once you do absorb information, how you can use it, right? Because that's going to be
Absolutely.
critical as well. Yeah,
Yes,
that's going to
absolutely.
be
I
as
think
well.
it's yeah, actually, I like the part two idea, because
Yeah,
this topic is so broad. I mean,
so broad.
we probably focus a lot more on the actual media and social media aspect, but there's also other resources that, that are out there that people can
Mhm.
refer to, on a positive light, right? Research papers go a long way. People actually take the time, to sit down and take, and research and find different opinions from everywhere else. So I think that's a very important topic to touch on next time when we meet. I love it.
Absolutely. It'd be
Okay.
great.
Yeah. So, okay. As a little takeaway from our conversation today is, don't ever, or try not to absorb everything that you hear or see out there on media. And also do the research yourself. Don't stay in your own little bubble. Try to be a little bit more open-minded. Listen to what people have to say without having to fight them and feel like you have to be right all the time, because nobody's right. Unfortunately, we live in a world where we don't come up with the information. The information is there. It's just how we receive it in our minds, right? So that would be my little
Absolutely.
takeaway is,
Hmm.
be kind to other people. I always kind of finish off with that. Be kind, be patient, and listen, take it in, and really take the time to absorb it. And what would be your takeaway, Leticia? Let's finish it off.
Mine would be very similar, but also, knowledge, information, media is there to support your elevation and growth. So if it's
Yes.
not doing that, then let's get rid of it. Okay.
Let's go. Let's just out the door.
Yes, out the door, out
Yeah.
the door, out
I
the
love
door.
it. I truly appreciate you being on the show today. And we are going to definitely do part two of this one, because I
Yes, I'd love
absolutely
it.
love this topic. There's so much more we can cover. And hope, thank you so much for joining us. And hope listeners, you guys had a very, very informative show today. And please let us know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. And Leticia, how can people find you, if they're looking for you, or maybe they want to reach you? What's your Instagram handle? And I'll also put it on the show notes.
Yes, it is. It is at UrbanTSYR. So at UrbanTSYR. And that is where you
Perfect.
get all the urban tea.
Yeah, I love it. And just also, people should stay tuned for season 2 of your Woke Wednesday, which I was so happy to have been part of. I think it was last year,
It
towards the end of the year,
was
where we had a panel where we were talking about, what were we talking about again?
wellness. We were
Wellness.
talking
That's
about
right.
mental and physical wellness, well-being
That's
going into
right.
the new year. It was an
Thank
awesome
you.
show. Would love to have you back.
Oh, yes. It was so fun. And it was great to meet all the other participants that were on there. Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of that. Anyway, so if you guys want to reach us, again, we have in different podcast streams, and we also will be airing the video content of this podcast on YouTube. And I will leave all the show notes, all the information on the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Keep well, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Please do not forget to leave us an awesome review, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and keep your notifications on for the next episodes ahead. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, please do not hesitate to contact us at Jacqui@rhythmfitness.ca.